Sorry, I thought I was stopped streaming there for a minute. I am going to be doing the bracelet that I was working on yesterday, and this isn't quite right. The bracelet I was doing yesterday, and I'm going to be listening to 12 to 22 on Paradiso and Divine on Dante's Divine Comedy. So it looks like I have to switch the ticker tape up there, but I'll do that in a second. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you. I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Section 79. Public domain. Paradiso, Canto 12. The fourth heaven. The sun. Intellectual happiness. The spirits of theologians and philosophers. Saint Dominic.
As soon as ere the blessed flame had voiced its final word, the holy wheel began to whirl, and in its circling had not moved around completely, ere another wheel enclosed it in a ring, and each to each matched with its own its motions and its songs. Songs which, in those sweet pipes, as far surpass our muses and our sirens, as a primal splendour surpasses one reflected from it. As when, both parallel and like in hue, two rainbows o'er a tender cloud are drawn, when Juno issues orders to her maid, the outer being from the inner born, as is the speaking of that wandering nymph whom love consumed, as mists are by the sun. And coarse folk hear, by reason of the pact which God with Noah made, to prophesy about the world, that it will not again be flooded. So of those eternal roses the two wreaths turned around us there, and so the outer with the inmost harmonized. After the dance and great high feast of song, and flaming interplay of light with light, in joyful happiness and tender love, had of a sudden and with one accord grown quiet, even as eyes do, which must close and open at the will of what attracts them. Out of the heart of one of those new lights a voice came forth, as to its where I turned, which made me seem a needle to its star. And it began,
The love which lends me beauty draws me to talk about that other leader, for whose sake mine is so well talked of here. Where one is, right it is to introduce the other, so that, since they fought together, their glories likewise may together shine. Christ's host, which cost so much to arm anew, was slowly, timidly, and small in numbers moving behind its standard, when the emperor, who ever reigns, provided of his grace alone for his endangered host, and not because of its deserts, and helped his bride, as it hath here been said, with champions twain, through whom, because of what they did and said, the people who had strayed away returned. In those parts where sweet zephyrs breezes rise to open springtime's foliage, wherewithal Europe is seen to clothe herself again, not very distant from the beating waves, behind which, through his long career, the sun conceals himself at times from every one. Fortunate Caloroga hath her seat, guarded by that great shield, in which the lion both subjugates and is subdued. Therein the amorous lover of the Christian faith was born, the holy athlete, well disposed toward those he loved, and toward his foes severe. And even at its creation was his mind with such live virtue filled, that in his mother it caused her to become a prophetess. After the spousal tween the faith and him had at the sacred font been held, where each with mutual health had dowered each, the lady who answered for him in a dream beheld the wondrous fruit that was to come from him and from his heirs. And that he might by name be what he was, a spirit went from hence, to give him the possessive of the one who wholly owned him. Dominic he was called, and of him as the husbandman I speak, whom Christ to help him in his garden chose. He truly seemed Christ's messenger and servant, because the first love which appeared in him was for the primal counsel given by Christ. Often was he discovered by his nurse lying awake and silent on the ground, as if he meant thereby, I came for this. Oh, Felix, of a truth his father was. Oh, truly Joan his mother, if it mean what it is said to, when interpreted. Not for the world's sake for which men now toil, following the men of Ostia and Taddeo, but for the love of spirit food. So great a teacher did he shortly make himself, that he began to go about the vineyard, which withers soon, if idle be the vintner. And of the chair, which to the righteous poor was formerly more kind, not through its own, but through the fault of him who, sitting there, degenerates, he asked not for the right to give, or 2 or 3 for 6, nor yet the income of the earliest vacancy, nor even the tithes which to God's poor belong, but leave to fight against the erring world for that seed's sake, whereof plants 24 are girding thee. With doctrine thereupon and will to apostolic sanction joined, he started like a torrent by a high source urged, and on all stocks heretical his onset smote. And ever there most strongly, where strongest the resistance was. From him there afterward flowed diverse streams, wherewith the garden Catholic is watered so, that all the fresher are its tender shrubs. If such was one wheel of the car, whereby the Holy Church, herself defending, won the civil struggle in her own domain, the other's excellence should certainly be very plain to thee, concerning whom Thomas so courteous was, ere I appeared. And yet the rut, formed by the highest part of its circumference, so forsaken is, that there where crust was, now is mould. His household, which started out aright, and kept their feet upon his footprints, hath so turned around, that that which is in front now treads on what was once behind. And this will soon be seen by the bad culture's harvest, when the tares will, of their loss of granaries, complain. And yet I say that one who, page by page, should search our book, would still some paper find where he could read, What I was wont to be, I am. But from Casala he'll not come, nor yet from Aquasparta, whence such men approach the rule, that one evades and one contracts its scope. Bonaventura's life am I, of Bagnoregio, who in great positions set sinister cares behind. Here are Illuminato and Augustine, who were among the first barefooted poor, and, corded, made themselves the friends of God. Hugh of St. Victor here among them is, and Peter Manjador, and Peter of Spain, who in a dozen books still shines on earth. Nathan the prophet, and Metropolitan Chrysostom, Anselm, ay, and that Donatus, who to the first art deigned to set his hand. Rabban is here, and at my side is shining the abbot of Calabria, Joachim, who with prophetic spirit was endowed. The flaming courtesy of brother Thomas and his discerning speech have moved me thus to celebrate so great a paladin, and with me likewise moved this company.
End of Paradiso, Canto 12. Section 80 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 13, the fourth heaven, the sun, intellectual happiness, the spirits of theologians and philosophers, Solomon's wisdom.
Let him imagine who would understand aright what now I saw, and let him hold the image like a steadfast rock, the while I speak, the 15 stars which vivify the sky at different points with such clear light, that vanquished is all denseness in the air. Let him imagine next that wane, whereto the bosom of our sky suffices so both night and day, that, as its pole revolves, it never disappears. And let him then imagine furthermore that trumpet's mouth, which at the axle's point begins, whereon the first wheel turns, and that all these had made 2 constellations of themselves, like that which Minos' daughter fashioned when she felt the cold of death, and one to have its rays within the other, and both to so revolve, that one moved forward and the other back. And he will of the actual constellation a shadow have, and of the double dance, which circled round the place where I then was. For it as far surpasses our experience, as swifter than the Chiana moves the heaven which outspeeds all the others. There they praised nor Bacchus nor Apollo, but three persons in one sole nature, the divine, and that in but one person with the human joined. The song and dance completed each its measure, whereat those holy lights gave heed to us, rejoicing thus to pass from care to care. And then the light, wherein the wondrous life of God's dear pauper had been told to me, of those harmonious gods the silence broke, and said,
Whereas one straw has now been threshed, and as its seed hath now been stored away, sweet love inviteth me to beat the other. Thou think'st that in the breast from which the rib was drawn, which went to form the lovely cheek, whose palate cost so much to all the world, and that in that one which, before and after the lance had pierced it, made such satisfaction as to outweigh all sins, whatever light our human nature is allowed, the whole was by that power infused which made them both. Thou hence art marvelling at what above I said, when I narrated that the good enclosed within the fifth light had no second. Ope now thine eyes to what I answer thee, and thou'lt see that my words and thy belief grow one in truth, as in a ring its centre. That which dies not, and that which mortal is, are naught but that idea's reflected light, to which our sire, by loving, giveth birth. For that bright light, which from its lucent source so flows that it is not divided from him, nor from the love which with them is entwined, out of its goodness gathers up its radiance, mirrored, as 'twere, in 9 subsistences, itself eternally remaining one. Thence to the lowest creatures it descends from act to act, and such becomes, that naught it makes but brief contingencies. And these contingencies I understand to be those generated things the moving heavens produce by means of seed and without seed. Of these the wax and that which mouldeth it are not of one same kind; hence underneath the ideal stamp they more or less reflect it. It hence results that, after its own kind, one selfsame plant bears better fruit and worse, and that with different natures ye are born, if tempered to perfection were the wax, and if the heavens were at their height of power, the whole light of the seal would be revealed. But nature, working as an artist doth, who hath, though skilled and toward his art disposed, a trembling hand, e'er gives it with a flaw. Hence, if the flaming love dispose and stamp the lucid vision of the primal power, complete perfection is therein acquired. Thus rendered worthy of an animal's complete perfection was the earth of old. Thus also was the virgin rendered pregnant. Hence thine opinion I as true commend, that human nature never was, nor will be, such as it once in those 2 persons was. And now, if I no further went, how then could he be peerless? would thy words begin. But, that what seemed not so may now seem clear, think who he was, and what the cause which moved him in his request, when ask was said to him. I have not spoken so, that thou shouldst not see clearly that a king he was, who asked wisdom to be a worthy king, and not to know the number of the angels here, nor whether, from a necessary premise, with one contingent, a necessity e'er followed as result; nor yet to know if a first motion needs must granted be, nor whether a triangle could be made with no right angle in a semicircle. Hence, if thou note both what I said and this, a royal wisdom is that peerless vision, on which the shaft of my intention strikes; and if too hath arisen, thou direct clear eyes, thou'lt see that it refers to kings alone, who many are, and few the good. With this distinction take thou what I said, for it can stand with that which thou believ'st of man's first father, and of our delight. And let this e'er be led unto thy feet, to make thee, like one weary, slowly move to both the yea and nay thou seest not. For very low among the fools is he, who affirms without distinction, or denies, in one as in the other case, because it happens that a quickly formed opinion is often in a wrong direction turned, and then the feelings bind the intellect. For worse than vainly leaveth he the shore, who fishes for the truth and hath no skill, since, such as he set out, he comes not back. And in the world are patent proofs of this, Parmenides, Melissus, Bryson, ay, and many who advanced, but knew not whither. So did Sabellius, Arius, and those fools who to the Scriptures were as sword blades are, in making faces crooked which were straight. In judging, let not people be too sure, like him who in the field computes the ears, or ever they are ripe; for I have seen a thorn bush seem all winter stiff and wild, and later bear a rose upon its top. And once I saw a vessel running straight and swiftly o'er the sea through all her course, and end by sinking at the harbour's mouth. Let not Dame Bertha or Sir Martin think, on seeing one man rob, and one give alms, that they behold them as they seem to God; for that one may get up, and this one fall.
End of Paradiso, Canto 13. Section 81 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 14. The Fourth Heaven. The Sun. The Fifth Heaven. Mars. The Happiness of Heroism.
In rounded vessels water moves from rim to centre, and from centre so to rim, according as one strikes it from without or from within. What I am saying here fell suddenly into my mind, when once the glorious life of Thomas ceased to speak, because of the resemblance which arose between his speech and that of Beatrice, who after him was pleased to speak as follows.
This spirit needs, although he tells you so, neither by voice nor e'en by thinking it, to reach the root of still another truth. Tell him, then, if the light wherewith your substance is flowering will remain with you the same eternally as even now it is. And if it still remains so, tell him how, when ye have been made visible again, it can be such as not to hurt your sight.
As, when impelled and drawn by greater gladness, those who are dancing lift at times their voices, and give their actions greater sprightliness, so at that prompt and reverent request the holy circles showed new joyousness, both in their whirl and in their wondrous song. He that lamenteth that we die down here to live up yonder, hath not seen up there the comfort of the eternal reign. That one and two and three, who ever lives and reigns in three and two and one, uncircumscribed, and circumscribing everything, was there by each and all of yonder spirits sung with such a melody that it would be a just reward for any one's desert. And in the smallest ring's divinest light I heard a gentle voice, like that with which perhaps the angel spoke to Mary, answer,
As long as Paradise's joy shall last, so long our love will radiate around it a garment such as this. Its clarity is patterned on our ardour, and our ardour upon our vision, and as keen is that as is the grace it hath above its worth. When with our glorious and perfected flesh we are clothed again, our persons will give greater pleasure, because of being all complete. Wherefore, whatever freely given light the good Supreme may grant us will increase, a light permitting us to see Him, whence our vision needs must grow, and grow the ardour which from it is enkindled, and hence grow the radiance likewise which proceeds from this. But as a burning coal emits a flame, and by its vivid glow surpasses it, so that its own appearance is maintained, so will this brightness which surrounds us now be vanquished in appearance by the flesh, which still is covered by the earth, nor will so great a light avail to weary us, because our body's organs will be strong for whatsoe'er is able to delight us.
So quick and careful seemed both choirs to say Amen, that clearly a desire they showed to have their buried bodies, and not perhaps for their own sakes alone, but for their mothers and fathers and the others, who were dear to them ere they became eternal flames. Then round us everywhere, of equal brightness, outside the lustre there, another rose, like an horizon which is growing clear, and as new apparitions come in sight throughout the sky, at early evening's rise, so that one's vision seems, and seems not, true. Meseemed that new subsistences I there began to see, and that a ring was forming outside the other two circumferences. O thou true sparkling of the Holy Spirit, how suddenly and glowingly it flashed before mine eyes, which vanquished stood it not. But Beatrice revealed herself so fair and smiling, that this vision must be left among those that followed not my memory. I hence gained strength to raise mine eyes again, and with my Lady alone I saw myself borne to a higher grade of blessedness. I well perceived that I was higher up, by reason of the stars' enkindled smile, which ruddier seemed to me than is its wont. With all my heart, and with that kind of speech which is the same in all, I made to God such holocaust as was befitting this new grace. And the ardour of my offered self had not yet been exhausted from my breast, when I perceived that sacrifice was welcome and pleasing. For to me there then appeared splendours between two rays, so bright and red that I exclaimed, O Helios, who dost so adorn them! As the galaxy, bedecked with smaller and with greater lights, so glimmers tween the world's poles, that even the wise are led to doubt. Thus, constellated in the depths of Mars, those rays described the honoured sign, which in a circle quadrant joinings make. My memory overcomes my genius here, because that cross so lightened forth the Christ, that I can find therefore no fit example. But whosoever taketh up his cross and follows Christ will pardon me again for what I leave, when in that glow he sees the Christ flash forth. Lights moved about from arm to arm, and 'tween the summit and the base, and sparkled brightly when they met, and when they passed each other. Thus we here see, straight and crooked, swift and slow, and ever renewing their appearance, particles of bodies long and short, as through a ray they move, whereby at times that shade is streaked, which folk, to shield them, make with skill and art. And as a viol or a harp, attuned with many strings, a pleasant tinkling makes for one by whom the music is not caught, so from the lights which there appeared to me, a melody was gathered through the cross, which rapt me, though I made not out the hymn. I well perceived it was of lofty praise, because Arise and conquer came to me, as to who heard, but did not understand. So much in love with it did I become, that naught had ever fettered me before with such sweet bonds. My words perhaps appear too bold, in that they lower set the pleasure given me by the lovely eyes, looking in which my longing finds its rest. But who considers that the living seals of all fair things do more, the higher up, and that I had not there looked up at them, may pardon me for what, to be excused, I'm self-accused, and see that I speak true. For here the holy joy is not excluded, since, as it mounts, the purer it becomes.
End of Paradiso, Canto 14. Section 82 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 15. The Fifth Heaven. Mars, the happiness of heroism. Martyrs of religion and altruism. Cacciaguida.
The kindly will, wherein is always shown the love which is by righteousness inspired, as greed is in the evil will revealed, silence imposed on that sweet singing lyre, and caused those holy chords to be at rest, which heaven's right hand slackens and draweth tight. How shall those substances to righteous prayers be deaf, who ceased from song with one accord, to give me the desire to pray to them? 'Tis well that he should boundlessly lament, who for the sake of that which lasteth not, deprives himself for ever of that love. As through serene and quiet evening skies there darts from time to time a sudden fire, which startles tranquil eyes that were at rest, and seems to be a star which changes place, saving that naught is missing where it flashed, and that itself lasts but a little while. So, from the arm which to the right extends, down to that cross's foot, there ran a star drawn from the constellation shining there. Nor from its ribbon did the gem depart, but through the radial band ran on, and looked like fire when back of alabaster moving. With the like affection did Anchises' shade reach forth, if our best muse deserve belief, when in Elysium he perceived his son.
O thou, my blood, O overflowing grace of God, to whom, as unto thee, was e'er the gate of heaven unlocked a second time?
Thus spoke that light, hence I thereto gave heed. Then to my lady turning back my face, I was on this side and on that amazed, for such a smile was glowing in her eyes, that I with mine thought I had touched the depths both of my grace and of my paradise. Thereat, a pleasure both to hear and see, the spirit joined to his beginning things I did not fathom, so profound his speech. Nor did he hide himself from me by choice, but by necessity, for his conception set itself higher than a mortal's aim. And when the bow of his impassioned love had so relaxed its tension that his words descended to the level of our mind, the first thing that was understood by me was,
Blessed be thou that, Trine and One, hast been so courteous to my seed.
And he went on,
A pleasing and a long protracted fast, derived from reading in the mighty volume, wherein nor white nor dark is ever changed, hast thou relieved, my son, within this light in which I now address thee, thanks to her, who for the lofty flight hath feathered thee. Thou deemest that to me thy thoughts flow down from him who primal is, as from a one, if known it be, proceeds a 5 and 6. Yet who I am thou dost not ask of me, nor wherefore I appear to thee more glad than any other in this joyous throng. Thou deemest what is true, because the small and great of this life at that mirror gaze, wherein, before thou think, thou show'st thy thought. But that the holy love, wherewith I watch with sight perpetual, and which causes me to thirst with sweet desire, may be fulfilled the better, let thy voice, firm, bold, and glad, proclaim the will, proclaim the wish, whereto my answer has already been decreed.
To Beatrice I turned, and she had heard before I spoke, and smiled a nod to me, which caused the wings of my desire to grow. Then I thus, when the first equality revealed himself to you, wisdom and love became for each of you of equal weight. Because the sun, whose heat and light illumed and warmed you, is of such equality, that all comparisons therewith are poor. But in the case of mortals, will and speech, because of reasons manifest to you, are differently feathered in their wings. Hence I, who mortal am, now realize this inequality, and render thanks with heart alone to thy paternal greeting. I earnestly beseech thee, living topaz, set in this precious jewel like a gem, that with thy name thou make me satisfied.
O thou, my leaf, in whom I pleasure took, while still awaiting thee, thy root I was.
He thus, as he replied to me, began, and then he said to me,
The one from whom thy family is named, and who hath circled the mountain for 100 years and more around the first ledge, was my son, and thy great-grandsire. Well behoveth it that thou shouldst shorten by thy works his long fatigue. Florence, within the ancient ring of walls, from which she still receives her tierce and nones, sober and modest still, abode in peace. No bracelets had she then, nor coronets, nor dames with ornamented shoes, or belts more likely to be looked at than themselves. Nor did a daughter frighten yet at birth her father, for her marriage age and dowry outran in neither way due measure yet. No houses had she void of families, nor yet had a Sardanapalus come to show us what could be achieved in halls. Not yet had Montemalo been surpassed by your Ucellatoio, which, outdone in its ascent, will be so in its fall. Belincion Berti going girt I saw with bone and leather, and his lady leave her looking-glass without a painted face. And Nerli's lord I saw, and the Delvecchios with unlined skins contented, and their dames with spindle and with thread. O lucky women! Sure of her burial place was each, and none as yet deserted in her bed for France. One stayed awake, absorbed in cradle cares, and used in comforting, the speech which forms a father's and a mother's first delight. Another from her distaff drawing flax, repeated for her household olden tales about the Trojans, Fiesole, and Rome. As great a marvel then would a Ciangella or Lapo Salterello have been held, as Cincinnatus or Cornelia now. To such a calm and beautiful town life, to such a safe community, to such a pleasant inn did Mary, called aloud, give me. And at the same time I became, within your ancient baptistry, a Christian and Cacciaguida. Moronto was my brother, and Eliseo. From the Po's valley came my lady to me, and from her name thine was formed. The Emperor Conrad afterward I followed, and among his chivalry he belted me a knight. By my good deeds I so obtained his favour. In his train I went against that law's iniquity, whose people, through your shepherd's fault, usurps your jurisdiction. There, by that vile folk, was I relieved from that deceitful world, the love of which debases many souls, and from my martyrdom attained this peace.
End of Paradiso, Canto 15. Section 83 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 16. The Fifth Heaven. Mars. The Happiness of Heroism. The Old and New Population of Florence.
O thou, our small nobility of blood, that thou shouldst make some people boast of thee down here, where languid our affections are, will never be to me a wondrous thing. For there, where love turns not aside, in heaven I mean, even I myself was proud of thee. Thou truly art a cloak which soon grows short, so that from day to day, if thou be not patched out, time goes around thee with its shears. Hence with the yew, which Rome the first endured, and in whose use her race least perseveres, my words began again. Whence Beatrice, who at a little distance from me stood, by smiling here, resembled her who coughed at the first fault ascribed to Guinevere. You are my father, I began to say, you to my speech complete assurance give. You so uplift me that I'm more than I. My mind is by so many brooklets filled with joy, that it congratulates itself that without breaking it can stand the strain, Tell me, then, you my dear progenitor, who were your ancestors, and what the years which in your boyhood's time were chronicled? And tell me of the sheepfold of St. John, how large it was, and who were in it then, that in the highest seats deserved to sit. As at the breathing of the winds a coal is quickened into flame, even so I saw at my endearing words that bright light glow. And to mine eyes, as fairer it became, so with a gentler and a sweeter voice, but not in this our modern form of speech, it said to me,
From that day on, when Hail was uttered, to the childbirth when my mother, who now is sainted, was relieved of me who burdened her, this fire had to its lion 450 times returned, to light itself again beneath its paws. My first progenitors and I were born just there, where first the town's last ward is found, by him who runneth in your annual race. Let of my forebears this suffice to hear. For as to who they were, and whence came hither, silence is more commendable than speech. All those that tween Mars' statue and the Baptist, who at that time were able to bear arms, were but the fifth of those that live there now, but then its citizens, who now with men from Campi, Certaldo, and Figine mix, were in the lowest artisans seen pure. Oh, how much better it would be to keep as neighbours those to whom I here refer, and at Galuzzo and Trespiano mark our boundary, than have them in our town, and bear the stench of Aguglione's churl, and Signa's, who for graft hath sharpened eyes. If those who in the world are lowest fallen had not stepmother like to Caesar been, but kind as to her son a mother is, one such is now a Florentine, and barters and trades, who would have turned to Semifonti, where formerly his grandsire mounted guard. The Conti still would own their Montemurlo, the Cerchi and Accone's parish be, and in the Val di Greve still, perhaps, the Buondelmonti. Ever was the mixing of clans the fountain of the city's woe, as of the body's ill superfluous food, for sooner will a blinded bull succumb than will a blinded lamb, and one sword oft will cut both more and better than will five. If thou consider Luni and Urbisaria, how they have gone, and how now in their wake Chiusi and Sinigalia go their way, it will not seem or strange for thee or hard to hear how families degenerate, since even cities have their term of life. All your creations die as well as you, but death conceals itself in some that long endure, while individual lives are short. And as the turning of the lunar sphere covers and bears earth's shores without surcease, e'en so doth fortune deal with Florence. Hence it should not seem a wondrous thing to thee what I of those great Florentines shall say, whose fame is hidden in the folds of time. I saw the Ugi, and saw the Catellini, Filippi, Greci, Ormani, and Alberici, though in decline, illustrious citizens. And I, as great as they were ancient, saw with him of La Sanella, him of Larca, the Soldanieri, Ardinghi, and Bostichi. Over the gate, which is at present burdened with recent felony of such great weight that there will soon be jetsam from the bark, the Ravignani dwelt, from whom there sprung Count Guido, and whoever since his time hath noble Bellincione's name assumed. He of La Presa knew already how to rule, and Gallicaio in his house already had a gilded hilt and pummel. Mighty already were the column of the Ver, Sacchetti, Luocchi, Fifanti, and Barucci, the Galli, and those that for the bushel blush. The stock whence the Calfucci sprang was great already, while already were the Sizzi and Arrigucci raised to curule chairs. And oh, how great I saw those now undone through arrogance! Then, too, the golden balls decked Florence forth in all her mighty deeds. So likewise fared the ancestors of those who, when your church is vacant, always fatten by staying in consistory together. The haughty race, which like a dragon deals with those that flee, and unto those that show their teeth or purse is peaceful as a lamb, was rising now, but from so low a clan that Ubertine Donati was displeased, when by his own wife's father made their kin. Already had the Caponzacco dropped from Fiesole into the market, while as townsmen good were Guida and Infangato. I'll tell a thing incredible and true. The small ring then was entered by a gate which from the Della Pera took its name. Each one who bears that mighty baron's arms, whose name and whose renown the festival of Thomas keepeth green, received from him knighthood and privilege, though he to-day consorteth with the people, who surrounds them with a border. Both the Gualterotti and Importuni were already there, and now their Borgo would more quiet be, if from new neighbours it were fasting still. The family which to your tears gave birth, through the just scorn which brought about your death and put an end to your once happy life, was honoured in itself and in its kin. How, Buondelmonte, ill-advised thou wast to flee their marriage, counselled by another! Many would happy be who now are sad, if God had to the Ama granted thee, when coming for the first time into town. But Florence to that mutilated stone which guards the bridge must needs a sacrifice afford, when in her final hour of peace. With these same families, and others with them, Florence I saw in such a state of rest, that no occasion had she then for tears. With these same families I saw her then, so glorious and so righteous, that the lily was never set upon a staff reversed, nor made, because of her divisions, red.
End of Paradiso, Canto 16. Section 84 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 17. The Fifth Heaven. Mars. The Happiness of Heroism. Foreknowledge and Freedom. Dante's Exile and First Refuge.
As that one came to Clymene, who still to sons makes fathers chary, to be sure of that which he had heard against himself. Even such was I, and such was felt to be by Beatrice, and by the holy lamp, who first on my account had changed his place. Wherefore my lady said to me,
Express thy wish's ardour, so that it may issue clearly impressed by its internal stamp, not that our knowledge may the greater grow by words of thine, but that thou mayst get use to tell thy thirst, that we may pour thee drink.
O my dear root, that so dost lift thyself, that as terrestrial minds perceive that no triangle holds two angles which are both obtuse, thou likewise, gazing at the point to which all things are present, dost perceive contingent things, ere in themselves they are. While I by Virgil was accompanied, upward around the mount which healeth souls, and downward through the region of the dead, grave words were told me of my future life. Although indeed I feel myself foursquare against the blows of fortune, my desire would hence contented be, were I to hear what kind of fortune is approaching me, for slower comes an arrow when foreseen. Thus to that light I spoke which had before addressed me, and as Beatrice had willed, so was my wish confessed. Not in vague terms, in which the foolish folk of old were wont to get entangled, ere the Lamb of God, who taketh sins away, was put to death, but with clear words and unambiguous speech, that father's love replied, which by its smile was both concealed and rendered manifest.
Contingence, which outside your matter's volume doth not extend, is in the eternal vision wholly depicted, yet it taketh not necessity therefrom, save as a ship, while down a current moving, doth from eyes which mirror it. Therefrom, as from an organ, sweet harmony attains one's ears, the time which is for thee preparing strikes my sight. As through his false and cruel stepmother Hippolytus left Athens, so must thou leave Florence. This is willed already, this is sought, and soon will be achieved by him who meditates it there, where every day Christ is both bought and sold. As usually, the blame will be imputed to the wronged in public outcry, but revenge for it will witness to the truth dispensing it. Thou shalt abandon all that thou hast loved with greatest tenderness, and of its shafts this is the one which exile's bow shoots first. Thou shalt find out how salt another's bread is wont to taste, and what a painful thing is going up and down another's stairs. But what will bow thy shoulders most will be the bad and foolish company with whom thou'lt fall into this vale, for all ungrateful, mad, and malevolent will it become against thee, but soon thereafter it, not thou, will have its forehead red with blood. Its deeds will furnish proof of its bestiality. Hence well becoming will it be for thee to have made thyself a party by thyself. Thy earliest refuge and first lodging-place shall be the courtesy of that great Lombard, who on the ladder bears the holy bird, and who will have for thee such kind regard, that tween you two in doing and in asking, that will be first, which is with others last. With him the man thou'lt see, who was when born so stamped by this strong star, that notable will be his deeds. By reason of his youth, the nations are not yet aware of him, for only 9 years have these wheels revolved around him. But before the Gascon chief, the noble Henry, sparks of his character will manifest themselves by disregard for money or for toil, and so well known will his munificence hereafter be, that even his enemies will not be able to still their tongues at it. On him rely, and on his favours. Many will be changed because of him, the rich and those that beg exchanging states. And written on thy mind shalt thou bear hence, but shalt not tell it.
Here he told me things incredible to those who shall be present. Then he added,
Son, glosses are these on what was said to thee. Behold the snares which lie concealed behind not many circlings of the sun. And yet I would not have thee envious toward thy neighbours, because thy life far longer will extend than will the punishment of their bad faith.
When by his silence that blessed soul had showed that he was through with weaving in the woof of that same web which I had given him warped, then I began, like one who, doubting, longs for counsel from a man who both perceives, wills righteously, and loves. I clearly see, my father, how toward me a time spurs on, to deal me such a blow as heaviest is to him who gives least heed to it. 'Tis therefore well that I should so with foresight arm myself, that if the place which is to me most dear be taken from me, I lose not the rest by these my verses. Downward through the world whose bitterness is endless, and around the mount from whose fair top my lady's eyes have lifted me, and afterward through heaven from light to light, things have I heard which, if repeated, will for many have the taste of bitter herbs, and yet, if I'm to truth a timid friend, I fear lest life I lose with those who shall of this age speak as ancient. The light wherein that treasure smiled, which there I found, sparkled at first, as in a sunbeam a golden mirror would, and then replied,
A conscience gloomy either with its own or with another's shame will feel indeed the harshness of thy words, yet none the less, all falsehood having been removed from it, cause thy whole vision to be manifest, and where the itch is let the scratching be. For if, when tasted first, thy voice shall prove offensive, it will after leave behind it, when once digested, vital nourishment. This cry of thine will do as doth the wind, which strikes the loftiest summits most, and this will no slight honour prove. Hence only souls well known to fame were shown thee in these heavens, upon the mount, and in the woeful vale, because the mind of him who hears rests not, nor strengthens its belief by illustrations based upon what is hidden and unknown, or by an argument that is not clear.
End of Paradiso, Canto 17. Section 85 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 18, the fifth heaven, Mars, the spirits of heroes. The sixth heaven, Jupiter, the happiness of justice.
That blessed mirror was enjoying now its thoughts alone, and I was tasting mine, tempering their sweetness with their bitterness, when that same lady who was leading me to God said,
Change thy thought. Recall that near I am to who unburdens every wrong.
I turned me at my comfort's loving voice, and in her holy eyes what kind of love I then beheld, I here refrain from saying. Not only since mine own words I distrust, but since my mind cannot return so far above itself, unless another guide it. This only of that moment can I tell, that my affection, while I gazed at her, was freed from longing for all other things, as long as joy eternal, which directly shone on Beatrice, with its reflected aspect, was from her lovely face contenting me. Conquering me with the splendour of a smile, she said,
Turn round and hark, for paradise is not exclusively within my eyes.
As our affection here is seen at times upon our countenance, if such it be that our whole spirit is thereby absorbed, so, in the flaming of the blessed effulgence to whom I turned, I recognized his wish to have a little further talk with me.
In this fifth threshold of the tree,
it then began,
which from its summit draws its life, always bears fruit, and never loses leaves, are blessed spirits, who before they came to heaven enjoyed so great a fame below that every muse would be thereby enriched. Gaze therefore at the cross's arms, and he whom I shall name will there perform the act, which in a cloud its own swift fire performs.
I saw a splendour drawn along the cross at Joshua's name, the moment it was uttered. Nor did I note the name before the deed. And at great Maccabeus's name I saw another spirit whirling as he moved, and gladness was the whip that turned the top. Likewise at Charlemagne's and Roland's names my gaze intently followed two of them, as doth a falconer's eye his flying bird. Then William afterward, and Renoir, Duke Godfrey next, and Robert Guiscard drew my sight along that cross. And then, moving and mingling with the other lights, the soul which had addressed me showed how great an artist 'mong heaven's choristers he was. Round to my right I turned me to behold in Beatrice my duty, signified by speech or act, and I beheld her eyes, so joyous and so clear, that what she seemed surpassed her other and her latest wont. And as because of feeling more delight in doing good, a man from day to day perceiveth that his virtue is increasing, even so, on seeing that that miracle was fairer now, I noticed that the arc of my revolving with the heavens had grown. And as within a little space of time a lady turneth white, whene'er her face rids itself of the burden of its shame, such to mine eyes the change when I had turned, through the white colour of the temperate sixth star, which had received me in itself. I saw within that jovial torch of light the sparkling of the love contained in it, shaping our language forth before mine eyes. And even as birds on rising from the shore, as if in gratulation at the food they've found, form groups, now round and now of other shapes, thus holy creatures in those lights were singing, as here and there they flew, and with their forms made of themselves now D, now I, now L. Each singing to its note, they moved at first. Then, on becoming one of these same letters, they stopped a little while, and silent kept. O thou divine Pegasian muse, that glorious dost make men's genius, and dost render it long-lived, as it through thee doth towns and realms, so shed thy light on me, that I may here describe their figures even as I perceived them. In these brief verses let thy power appear. They then displayed themselves in consonants and vowels 5 times 7, and as their parts seemed to be said to me, I noted them. Diligite justitiam were first verb and noun of all that was depicted there. Qui judicatis terram were the last. Then in the 5th word's M they so remained arranged, that Jupiter seemed silver there, pricked out with gold. And other lights I saw descend upon the summit of the M, and rest there, singing, I believe, the good which draws them to itself. Then, as when logs are struck while burning, endless sparks fly up, whence fools are wont to draw their auguries, more than 1,000 lights appeared to rise, and upward move, some much, and some a little, even as the sun, which setteth them on fire, allotted them. And when they quiet were, each in its place, an eagle's head and neck I saw portrayed by that outstanding fire. He who paints there hath none to be his guide, but is his own guide, and from him derives the instinct which is formative in nests. The other blessed ones, who at first appeared content to form a lily on the M, went slowly on to shape the eagle's form. O gentle star, what and how many gems proved to me that our justice here results from that heaven's influence which is gemmed by thee. I therefore pray the mind, wherein thy motion and virtue start, that it may so regard the source, whence comes the smoke which spoils thy rays, that it may now a second time be wroth with sale and purchase in that temple's court, whose walls were built with blood and martyrdom. O soldiers of the heaven I contemplate, pray ye for those that are on earth, all gone astray behind the bad example there. War was once carried on with swords, but now by taking here and there that bread away, the pitying Father keepeth locked from none. But thou that writest but to cancel, think that Peter and Paul, who for that vineyard died, which thou art laying waste, are still alive. Well mayst thou say, so set is my desire on him, whose will it was to live alone, and for a dance was led to martyrdom, that I know neither fisherman nor Paul.
End of Paradiso, Canto 18. Section 86 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 19. The sixth heaven. Jupiter. The happiness of justice. Inscrutability of God's justice. Unjust princes.
Before me now, with wings outspread, appeared the lovely image, which in sweet fruition these joyous interwoven spirits made. Each one of them a little ruby seemed, wherein a ray of sunlight burned so brightly that it was mirrored back into mine eyes. And what I now must needs relate, no voice hath e'er reported, nor hath ink inscribed, nor hath imagination ever grasped. For I both saw and heard the beak converse, and utter in its voice both I and my, when in its meaning it was we and our. And it began,
Because of being just and merciful, I'm to a glory raised up here, which doth not let itself be won by mere desire. And such a fame I left on earth, that evil people there commend it, but fail to follow its recorded works.
as out of many embers one sole heat makes itself felt, so from that image, formed by many loves, a single voice came forth. Hence I thereafter, O perpetual flowers of joy eternal, who let all your odours seem only one to me, by breathing break the painful fast, which long hath given me hunger, for I on earth have found no food for it. Well do I know that even if in heaven justice divine makes of another realm its looking-glass, yours apprehends it not through any veil. Ye know with what attention I gird myself to listen, and ye know the doubt which is so old a fast for me. And as a falcon from his hood set free tosses his head, and flapping his proud wings displays his eagerness, and plumes himself, such I beheld the symbol which is weaved by praises of the grace divine, become with songs, which who up there rejoices knows. It then began,
He who his compass turned around the world's vast verge, and in it parted its many hidden things from those revealed, was not so able to impress his virtue on all the world, that his conceived ideal should not remain in infinite excess. And this assures one that the first proud being who greater was than all created spirits, through not awaiting light, untimely fell. It hence results that every lesser nature is but a scant recipient for the good which hath no end, and measures self by self. Your vision, therefore, which must needs be one of that mind's rays, wherewith all things are filled, of its own nature cannot be so strong that it should not perceive its source as being far greater than is all that it can see. The vision, therefore, which your world receives into eternal justice penetrates as doth an eye into the sea, because, though it perceive its bottom near the shore, when on the deep it sees it not, yet there it is, but its great depth conceals it. That is not light which comes not from the sky, which never clouds itself, but rather darkness, a shadow of the flesh, or else its poison. Sufficiently disclosed to thee is now the hiding place which once concealed from thee the living justice, which so frequently it is thy wont to question. For thou saidst, A man is born upon the Indus's banks, with no one there to speak of Christ, or read, or write, and all his actions and desires are good, as far as human reason sees, and without sin in either life or speech. Then, unbaptized and without faith, he dies. Wherein consists the justice which condemns him? Where is his fault, if he believeth not? Now who art thou, that as a judge wouldst sit to judge of things 1,000 miles away, with the short vision of a human span? Surely for him who subtly strives with me, were not the Scriptures ruling over you, wondrous occasions would there be for doubt. O earthly creatures! O uncultured minds! The primal will, which of itself is good, ne'er from itself, the highest goodness, moved. That much is just, which is therewith accordant. No good created draws it to itself, but it by radiating causes it.
As o'er her nest a stork moves circling round after the feeding of her little ones, and as the one that's fed looks up at her, such did the blessed shape become, which moved its pinions, by so many counsels urged, and likewise so did I lift up my brows. Wheeling around, it sang and said,
As now my notes to thee that understandst them not, such to you mortals is eternal justice.
When those bright flamings of the Holy Spirit had come to rest, still in the shape which caused the Romans to be honoured by the world,
None to this kingdom,
it began again,
ever ascended without faith in Christ, neither before or after he was nailed upon the tree. But many, lo, shout Christ, who at the judgment shall be far less near him than will be such an one who knows not Christ. Christians like these the Ethiop will condemn. When parted shall the two assemblies be, one rich eternally, the other poor. What will the Persians to your rulers say when lying open they shall see the book, wherein all their dispraises are inscribed? There will be seen among the deeds of Albert that which ere long will move the pen, because thereby Prague's kingdom will become a waste. There will be seen the woe which on the Seine he who shall perish by a boar's skin blow bringeth about by falsifying coin. There will be seen the pride and thirsty greed which makes the Scot and Englishman so mad that neither can remain within his bounds. One will see there the easy life and lust of him of Spain and of Bohemia too, who neither of them knew nor cared for valor. One will see there, marked with a single eye, the virtues of Jerusalem's lame king, whereas an M will mark the contrary. One will see there the greed and cowardice of him who ruleth over the Isle of Fire, where once Anchises ended his long life. And, to explain his insignificance, his record will consist of shortened words, which in a little space will notice much. And there to each and all will be revealed the foul deeds of his uncle and his brother, who 2 crowns and a noble line disgraced. And he of Portugal and he of Norway will there be known, as also Rossia's prince, who in an ill hour saw Venetia's coin. O happy Hungary, if she no more shall let herself be wronged! Happy Navarre, if with her girding hills she arm herself! And both these should believe that Nicosia and Famagosta, as a proof of this, are wailing now and raging at their beast, because he does not differ from the rest.
End of Paradiso, Canto 19. Section 87 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 20. The Sixth Heaven. Jupiter. The Happiness of Justice. Just Princes. Faith and Salvation. Predestination.
When he who sheddeth light on all the world so far below our hemisphere descends that daylight fades away on every side, The sky, once lighted up by him alone, is quickly rendered visible again by many lights, whereof one only shines. And I this happening in the sky recalled, when silent in the blessed beak became the standard of the world and of its leaders. For brighter far those living lights commenced songs which have fled and fallen from my mind. O thou sweet love, that with a smile dost cloak thee, how ardent in those flutes didst thou appear, whose only breath was that of holy thoughts! After those precious and pellucid jewels, wherewith I saw the sixth great light engemmed, had brought to silence their angelic chimes, I seemed to hear the murmur of a brook, which, flowing limpid down from rock to rock, reveals the abundance of its mountain springs. And as a sound takes from a citern's neck its form, even as the air that enters it doth from the vent-hole of a shepherd's pipe, so, all delay of waiting laid aside, that murmur of the eagle mounted up along its neck, as if it hollow were. A voice it there became, and through its beak it issued forth in words, such as the heart whereon I wrote them down was longing for.
That part of me which sees and braves the sun in mortal eagles,
it began again,
must now be looked upon attentively, for of the fires wherewith I shape me, those wherewith the eye is sparkling in my head, the highest are of all their ordered grades. He that as pupil in the middle shines was once the singer of the Holy Spirit, who bore the ark about from town to town. He now knows how deserving was his song, so far as it resulted from his will, by the reward proportioned to its merit. Of 5 that make a circle for my brow, the spirit nearest to my beak was he who comforted the widow for her son. He now knows by his personal experience of this sweet life and of its opposite, how dear it costs one not to follow Christ. In the circumference of which I speak, he that comes next upon the rising ark delayed his death by genuine repentance. He now knows that eternal justice brooks no change, whenever worthy prayers below tomorrow's make of that which was today's. The one who follows, with the laws and me, with good intentions which produced bad fruits, made himself Greek by ceding to the shepherd. He now knows that the ill, from his good deed derived, is not a cause of harm to him, although thereby the world may be destroyed. He whom thou seest in the downward ark, the William was, for whom that country mourns, which weeps because its Charles and Frederick live. He now knows how heaven loves a righteous king, and by his splendor's glow reveals it still. Who in the erring world below would think that Ripheus the Trojan was the 5th among the holy lights which form this curve? He now knows many of the things the world is impotent to see in grace divine, although his sight discerneth not its depths.
Like a young lark, which as it soars through space, first sings, and then is silent, satisfied with the last sweetness which contented her. Such seemed to me the image of the seal of that eternal pleasure, by whose will each thing becometh what it is. And though, with reference to my doubt, up there I was, as glass is to the colour which it clothes, it could not bear to bide its time in silence, but by the very force of its own weight urged from my mouth the words, "What things are these?" Whereat I saw a glorious feast of sparkling. Thereafter with its eye the more enkindled, the blessed sign, in order not to keep me in wondering suspense, replied to me,
I see that thou believest all these things, because I say them, but dost not see how, and therefore, though believed in, they are hidden. Thou dost as one who fully knows a thing by name, but cannot see just what it is, unless another make it manifest. Regnum coelorum suffers violence from burning love, and from a living hope, which vanquishes the will divine, though not as man o'ercometh man, but conquers it because it willeth to be overcome, and so, though vanquished, by its goodness wins. The first life in the eyebrow and the 5th cause thee to be amazed, because therewith thou seest the region of the angels painted. They did not issue Gentiles from their bodies, as thou dost think, but Christians with firm faith, one in the feet that were to suffer, one in those that had. For one, to claim his bones, came back from hell, where no one ever wills the good again. And this was the reward of living hope which put its trust in prayers addressed to God to raise him, that thus his will might have a chance to act. The glorious soul I speak of, when the flesh had been regained, wherein he stayed not long, believed in him who had the power to help him, and through belief so warmed to genuine love that he was worthy at his second death to come to this festivity. The other, through grace from so profound a spring distilled, that never hath the eye of any creature reached its first wave, set all his love below on righteousness. Hence God, from grace, to our redemption which is still to be, opened his eyes. He hence believed in it, and afterward endured no more the stench of paganism. And for it he rebuked those who perverted were. And those 3 ladies thou sawest at the right wheel of the car, in lieu of baptism, were as sponsors for him more than 1,000 years ere baptism was. O thou predestination, how remote are thy foundations from the sight of those who do not see the first cause as a whole! And ye, O mortals, keep yourselves in check, when judging men. For we, who God behold, know not as yet all those that are elect. And pleasant is such ignorance to us, because our good is in this good refined, that what is willed by God we also will.
Thus then, by that divinely pictured image, to make the shortness of my vision clear, a pleasant medicine was granted me. And as a skilful zither player makes the strings' vibrations follow a good singer, whereby the song acquires more power to please, even so, while it was speaking, I recall that both those blessed lights I then beheld, as when in winking eyes concordant are, moving their flamelets to the eagle's words.
End of Paradiso, Canto 20. Section 88 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 21. The Seventh Heaven. Saturn. The Happiness of Contemplation. The Golden Ladder. Predestination. St. Peter Damian.
And now mine eyes upon my lady's face were fixed again, and therewithal my mind, which from all other objects had withdrawn. Nor was she smiling then, but
Should I smile?
She said, addressing me.
Like Semele wouldst thou become when she to ashes turned, because my beauty, which along the stairs of this eternal palace brighter burns as thou hast seen the higher we ascend, is so resplendent that thy mortal strength at its effulgence, were it not restrained, would be as is a bough which lightning rends. Up to the 7th splendor we are raised, which now beneath the burning lion's breast is raying downward mingled with his strength. Intently fix thy mind behind thine eyes, and cause them to be mirrors of the figure which in this mirror will appear to thee.
He that should know what, in the blessed face, the nature of my vision's pasture was, when I transferred me to another care, would know, since one was outweighed by the other, how gladly I obeyed my heavenly guide. Within the crystal which, as round the world it whirls, bears its illustrious leader's name, under whose rule all wickedness lay dead, coloured like gold whereon a sunbeam shone, a ladder I beheld, which so high up ascended that my eye pursued it not. I saw moreover coming down its steps so many glowing splendours that I thought that every star seen shining in the sky had been poured out of it. And even as doors, as is their natural wont when day begins, together move to warm their chilly plumes, and then without returning some fly off, and some go back to whence they started first, while others, whirling in a circle, stay. Such was, it seemed to me, the fashion here within the sparkling throng which came together, whene'er they met upon a certain round. And that which nearest to me there remained, became so bright, that in my thoughts I said, I clearly see the love thou showest me. But she, whence I await the how and when of silence and of speech, keeps still, hence I, against my will, do well by asking naught. She thereupon, who in the sight of him who seeth everything, my silence saw, said unto me,
Appease thy warm desire.
And I began, My merit doth not make me worthy of thy reply, but for the sake of her who granteth me the right to ask, make known to me, blessed life that art concealed in thine own joy, the cause which draweth thee so closely to my side, and tell me why that gentle symphony of paradise is silent in this wheel, which down below sounds so devoutly through the other spheres.
Thy hearing is as mortal as thy sight.
It answered me,
There is no singing here, because of that which hinders Beatrice from smiling. Down the holy ladder's steps have I so far descended, but to give thee a welcome with my words, and with the light which mantles me. Nor hath the greater love caused me to be more ready. For as much or more love burns up yonder, as those flames revealed to thee, but that great charity which makes us ready servants of the council which rules the world allots here, as thou seest.
I well perceive, O holy lamp, said I, how that free love is in this court enough for following the eternal providence. But this is what seems hard for me to see, why thou alone among thy consorts here predestinated wert for just this task. No sooner had I come to my last word than, like a rapid millstone whirling round, the light had of its middle made its centre, and then the love within it answered me.
Piercing the light wherein I'm here embosomed, a ray of light divine upon me falls, whose virtue, as it mingles with my sight, so lifts me o'er myself, that I behold that highest essence whence it emanates. Hence comes the joy with which I'm flaming now, for with thy sight, as far as it is clear, I equalize the clearness of my flame. And yet the most enlightened soul in heaven, the seraph who hath eyes most fixed on God, would not avail to satisfy thy question. For what thou askest plumbeth so the depths of God's eternal statute, from all that created vision is cut away. And to the mortal world on thy return carry this charge, that it presume no more to move its feet toward such a distant goal. The mind which shineth here on earth is smoky. Consider hence how it can do down there what, though assumed to heaven, it cannot do.
So all-conclusive were his words to me, that giving up the question I confined me to asking humbly of him who he was.
'Tween Italy's two seashores, cliffs arise not very far from thine own native place, so high that thunders peal much lower down, and form a lofty ridge called Cattria, 'neath which our hermitage is consecrate, whose wont to worship only gives it up.
He thus began for me his third address, and then, continuing, said,
To serving God I there became so steadfastly devoted, that, feeding upon olive juice alone, I readily endured both heat and cold, and was with thoughts contemplative content. That cloister's wont it was to yield these heavens abundant fruit, but it hath now become so empty, that its state must soon be known. In that place I was known as Peter Damian, and sinning Peter in Our Lady's house I was, upon the Adriatic shore. But little mortal life remained to me, when I was sought, and forced to take the hat, which always passes on from bad to worse. Lean and barefooted Cephas came, and then the Holy Spirit's mighty vessel came, eating the food of any hostelry. Our modern shepherds now on either side need help to prop them, help, they weigh so much, to guide, and help to hold them up behind. They cover so their palfreys with their cloaks, that two beasts walk beneath a single hide. O patience, that dost tolerate so much!
More flamelets at these words I saw descend from step to step, and whirl, and every whirl caused each of them to grow more beautiful. And round this flame they came, and having stopped, uttered so deep a cry, that none could here resemble it. Nor did I understand its words. Its thunder overcame me so.
End of Paradiso, Canto 21. Section 89 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 22. The Seventh Heaven. Saturn. Saint Benedict. The Eighth or Starry Heaven. The Twins.
Oppressed with stupor, To my guide I turned, as would a little child who always runs for help to where he most confides. And she, as doth a mother who at once assists her pale and breathless offspring with her voice, whose wont is to assure him, said to me,
Knowest thou not that thou art now in heaven? And knowest thou not that all of heaven is holy, and that of good zeal cometh all done here? To what extent the song, as well as I, by smiling would have changed thee, thou canst now imagine, since the cry has shocked thee so. In it, if thou hadst understood its prayers, already were the vengeance known to thee which thou shalt see before thou die. Our sword up here cuts nor in haste nor tardily, save as to one it seems who waits for it with either apprehension or desire. But turn thyself around towards others now, for many illustrious spirits shalt thou see, if, as I tell thee, thou direct thine eyes.
Mine eyes I then directed as she pleased, and saw 100 little spheres, which, gathering, by mutual rays each other fairer made. Like one I was who checks within himself the goad of his desire, and dares not ask, so great his fear lest he may ask too much. The largest and most lustrous of those pearls came forward thereupon, to sate my wish concerning it. Within it then I heard,
If thou, as I do, couldst behold a love which burns among us here, thy thoughts would be expressed, but lest, by waiting, thou delayed thy lofty aim, I'll answer now the thought which causes thee to so restrain thyself. That mountain on whose slope Casino stands was once frequented on its top by folk, who both deluded were and ill disposed. And he am I, who first up yonder bore the name of him, who carried down to earth the truth which were exalted us so much, and such abundant grace upon me shone, that I withdrew the neighbouring villages from that vain worship which seduced the world. These other fires were all contemplatives, men who were kindled by the heat which brings the flowers and fruits of holiness to birth. Here is Macarius, Romuald is here, and here are those my brethren who remained in cloisters and who steadfast kept their hearts.
and I to him, the affection shown by thee in talking with me, and the kindliness I see and note in all your burning flames, have opened wide my trust, even as the sun dilates the rose, whene'er its petals ope as widely as they can. Because of this, I pray thee, Father, do thou then inform me if I am worthy to receive such grace as to behold thee with thy face unveiled. Then,
Brother,
he replied,
thy great desire in the last sphere above shall be fulfilled, where all thine others are, and mine as well. Every desire is perfect there, mature and whole. In that sphere only is each part where it has always been, for it is not in space, nor turns on poles, and up to it our ladder reaches, and because of this it steals itself away beyond thy ken. Jacob, the patriarch, beheld it stretch thus far its upper portion, when of old laden with angels it appeared to him. But from the earth, to climb it, no one now removes his feet, and my monastic rule remains but as a means of wasting paper. Walls which of old an abbey used to be, have now become the dens of thieves, and cowls are sacks now, filled with naught but wretched meal. But heavy Ashoru doth not rebel against God's will, as much as doth the fruit which renders so insane the hearts of monks. For, whatsoever the Church may hold in trust, is all for those that ask it in God's name, and not for relatives, or what is worse. So soft the flesh of mortals is, that good beginnings do not last as long below. As from an oak's until its acorn's birth, Peter began with neither gold nor silver, and I, with prayers and fasts, began my convent, as Francis, with humility, did his. And if thou look at each of these beginnings, and then consider whither each hath run, thou'lt see that what was white hath turned brown, Jordan turned backward, and the water fleeing when God was so willed, were much more wonderful to see, in fact, than succour would be here.
He thus addressed me. To his company thereat returning, they together closed. Then like a whirlwind all were upward rapt. The gentle lady up that ladder's rounds urged me behind them by a sign alone. Her virtue so o'ercame my natural weight. Nor here below, where one goes up and down by natural law, was motion e'er so swift, as to be equal to my pinion's flight. So may I, reader, once again return to that celestial triumph, for whose sake I oft bewail my sins and smite my breast. Thou hadst not drawn away and put thy finger as quickly into fire, as I beheld the sign which follows Taurus, and was in it. O glorious stars, O light, that pregnant art with mighty virtue, from which I acknowledge all of my genius, whatsoe'er it be. With you was born, and in your midst was hiding he who is father of all mortal life, when first I breathed the Tuscan air, and then, when grace had been bestowed upon me here to enter that high wheel which turns you round, your region was the one allotted me. To you my sighing soul devoutly prays, that it may now acquire the power it needs for that hard task, which draws her to itself.
To ultimate salvation thou art now so near.
In answer Beatrice began.
That clear should be thine eyes, and keen their sight. Therefore, ere further thou in it thyself look downward, and behold how great a world I have already set beneath thy feet, so that thy heart, as joyous as it can, may show itself to that triumphant throng which happy comes through this ethereal sphere.
Then with my vision I returned through one and all 7 spheres, and this globe I beheld such that its mean appearance made me smile. Hence that opinion I approve as best which deems it least, and thus may he be called who sets his thought on something else. Latona's daughter I enkindled saw, without the shadow which was once the cause of my believing her both rare and dense. The countenance, Hyperion, of thy son I here sustained, and saw how near to him both Maia and Dione round him move. And after this the temperance of Jove appeared to me, between his son and sire, and clear the reason for their change of place. All 7 of them were thus revealed to me, how great they are, how swift and far apart in their abodes. The little threshing floor which maketh us so fierce was as a whole revealed to me, from hills to river mouths, while I was circling with the eternal twins. Back to the lovely eyes I then turned mine.
End of Paradiso, Canto 22.
So that was the end of that.
Section 80.
Oh. Almost to the end of this book. It's so long. Oh my gosh. The bracelet I'm making is coming along nicely. I decided to use a button clasp, so I'll end up doing a border around this and then just do a button clasp here. And it should fit fairly nicely. And yeah, except all these ends. Oh, how painful is that? But it'll look nice when it's done. Anyway, I'm planning on doing the next stream tonight. I'd like to get this book done so I can listen to something else. Something that's not quite so long and not quite so terribly long. And get quick projects done rather than long projects. So, you have an absolutely wonderful day, and we will see you later. Bye.